We're here
Good.
today with Shags, and Shags has a lot of valuable information for those parents out there who might have a child who's struggling with eating. So we're going to get into that today, and I just want to start off that Shags has, we talked before, and he's really warmed my heart with just, some songs that he sent me from, being in the area in South Bay. We know some landmarks and stuff. So, hey Shags, how's it going? Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Glad to have you.
So
So,
yeah,
yeah,
let's just
you,
jump right into it because I shared my story with you last week, and you wanted to have others hear it, and it's not an easy one to tell, and it's because I have a child who had an eating disorder. They developed bulimia, and they developed bulimia in response to a number of things. One, which was body shaming that they were getting not just from friends at school and family, but which we tried to correct with family, it just didn't work. But also the fact that she was an aspiring performer and was getting opportunities to audition for parts, and she wasn't getting them, mostly because of what was going on with the way she looked, her body shape. And they were in eighth grade health class. The teacher was talking about eating disorders. And these are things that you should not do. Well, when you tell a child this is something you should not do, they wonder, there must be something here to it. She looked up a few things. This was back in the early days of the internet, and she found a few websites which are called Pro-Mia or Pro-Ana websites. Ana for anorexia, Mia for bulimia. And I believe that's when she started to experiment with purging. And she was a food lover, so this would cause her to be awfully hungry, and so she would eat, but then she would purge, and then she would eat again, and then she would purge. And it got to be a cycle over the course of maybe 6 to 8 months where it worked its way up to what was almost an $80 to $100 a day food habit when she was going to different fast food places. Now, early on, it wasn't so bad, but there were warning signs. So what are the warning signs that you might look for? Well, one is if your child is eating a lot and then getting sick, and they say, it just upset my stomach, but I don't know, maybe it was the cheese. Her addiction was lasagna, and maybe it was the cheese. I don't know. And so you worry about it. You talk to the doctor, and they say, just keep an eye on things. Well, I noticed that it was getting a little bit more frequent. And since I was the one that often did the cleaning of the basement and the bathroom down there, that's what she was using. And I saw that in the toilet bowl, the finish of the porcelain was starting to wear away from acid, that there were spots on the wallpaper from where the splash had been wiped away and the acid left a little burn. That's one warning sign when you're looking at the commode. Another one is when you're dealing with your child. If you look at the back of their hands and you're seeing some scratch marks or bite marks or little wounds or even just red marks, that can be a sign of them having to push their hand back so far to trigger the vomiting response. Another one is talking to their dentist. Our dentist happened to be working with a lot of girls with the local ballet group because his daughter was a dancer. And the warning signs there are the fact that the back of your teeth are starting to rot away from acid burns. And they are very aware of what's going on there. But you're going to get denial, of course.
yeah,
And that doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It just means that the child is really good at putting up a show.
yeah,
And in our case, it was rather interesting because she was an actress, learning to be an actress, and she was really good at putting on a show. And, it went on and went on. My wife, I talked to her, and she's a health professional, and she did all the right things as well. The child was just in resistance. And it took about, I would say, a year and a half, 2 years into it when she started going to the doctor because she was getting heart palpitations, and they did blood work on her, and they found that potassium level was way down, and that's when she came truthful.
Uh,
I've been dealing with this, and I just don't know how to stop. And
mm,
I don't know that I want to stop.
mm,
So we looked into what can we do. Well, first of all, we talked to the pediatrician because she was still under 18, and they took them till 18. And she suggested that we find a local therapist that we could work with. I actually knew somebody who was a childhood friend of mine who had dealt with weight issues her whole life and had become a licensed social worker and was focusing on helping women with eating disorders. That worked to a bit of a degree, but the thing with bulimia is that when you're purging so much, it interrupts the vagal nerve. That's the main nerve that goes, I don't know if it goes down this side of the body or this side of the body, but it's the main nerve that controls almost all of the gut function. So when you get disruptions of the vagal nerve, it's causing your whole system to be off. And also when you're purging, there's such a rush of endorphins in the brain that you end up getting addicted to the brain chemistry and the rush that you get. And the rush is there because when you're dealing with weight, sometimes we think that this is out of control. And when we're purging, now we're gaining.
Yeah.
And people are resistant to making a change of something where they feel they're going to lose control.
Yeah.
So she got into this phase by seeing how it helped her to gain and then maintain control over her body weight. Now, remember, all this time, she's getting thinner. She's saying she's going to the gym because the high school had just opened a new health room for the kid. And she was getting positive affirmations.
Yeah.
She was getting new clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't fit. Her friends said how great she was looking.
Mm-hmm.
Her talents, her agent said, "You're looking much better. Is anything wrong? How are you doing this?" And she said, "I'm exercising and I'm watching my weight." And she looked at me and I said, "That's what she's telling us." And when Jen left the room, I said, "I'm not so sure, but we are looking into this." And she said, "That's good." She's seen a lot of girls and men, guys too, who turn to that to make weight, just as you said you had that experience in wrestling.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with a situation that's really a challenge on a number of different fronts. One is they're dealing with their own control, and they're doing it in a way which isn't healthy, but that non-healthiness is triggering some activities in the brain and the nervous system which are rewarding.
Yeah.
Not physically rewarding, but mentally rewarding.
Yeah.
One is that you're seeing yourself as the person that you want to be. And secondly is that you have control over the fact that you're eating as much as you want to and not getting weight.
Yeah.
And then there's that rush. And when you get that rush, it's just like any addict.
Yep.
I work with people and money. And there's a great book came out about 10 years ago by Jason Zweig, Your Money in Your Brain.
Mm.
When you're dealing with people who have addiction issues, and that's what this becomes. It becomes an addiction issue. You're addicted to your brain chemistry and the release. Cocaine is an addiction. Food can be an addiction. Money can be an addiction. When there's a gambler that is placing a bet and they may be winning, the area of the brain, I forget the exact name of it, something incubus, but it lights up to the same degree and in the exact same place as somebody is about to start a line of coke.
Yeah. Yeah.
They show that this anticipation is a mental thing and the actual release. So the therapist only goes so far and the doctor only goes so far. So it turned out once she confessed to this and said, "I want help," we began to look into different places. Now, my parents had a winter home in Florida, and there was a place down close to them called the Renfrew Center. Excuse me. So we looked into that, and she entered a 30-day residency program which was then followed up by a 30-day outpatient program. While she was there, she was living with my parents, which can be stressful in its own right because grandma was one of the ones that pushed her into this because of body shaming. And
Yeah.
rest in peace. Mom knew, but still. And they had a lot of stuff around which would enable her, when she was living with them, to sneak back into it in a sneaky way, all the time still going to therapy.
Before,
And
just to ask a quick question.
Mhm.
This body shame thing that is oftentimes unintentional. Before we hear how outpatient went, what do you mean by that?
Oh, somebody's saying, do you really need another portion of that? Don't you think you've had enough? It looks like you put on a little bit of weight. That's a
So
new.
they're not like outright comments about, oh, you're fat. They're no one says that. I mean, maybe sometimes, but oftentimes these comments, it sounds like you're saying they can just be like innocuous remarks.
They say, I'm concerned for you because you're not at a healthy weight.
Yeah.
And so it could be that as well.
It can even be well intentioned.
Yeah. And at her largest point, she's 5 foot. And right now I think she's about 100 pounds. At her largest, she was about 140. And the shirts that she would buy to hide herself fit me. And I'm 5'4", and at that time I was probably around 170.
And how did you become aware of this body shame and any changes that you made personally? It just an awareness of how you spoke, maybe perhaps, or even informing others or educating others about how to speak, or
Family thing, because whenever you get together, they always look at you and say, "Oh, it looks like you put on a little weight," or "Oh, you look good,
yeah,
you lost weight." Why do people do that? Why do they feel they have to comment on somebody else's physical appearance? One, it's obvious. Two, they feel as if they're permitted to do so. And
yeah,
maybe three, they just don't care. I don't know.
yeah. I know it's really tough for a lot of people because I know a woman that I'm working with right now. She is really terrified of going to this family reunion because her family's Indian, and she says that Indian people are very, very strict on openly criticizing her body. And I feel so, it's a family reunion. It's one thing when you're maybe can talk with an aunt or an uncle privately and say, even that takes a lot of courage to have a conversation, say, hey, don't comment on my body. But when it's a family gathering, it's impossible nearly. And
I was ready to get her a T-shirt that said, "My body is me. Do
yeah,
not shame me. How I look is up to me. I don't need to hear anything from you."
yeah, yeah. Amen. Amen. If you're a parent listening to this, you, just be aware, very aware that those comments that you might not even know you're making them.
And people who are larger than they need to be know they're larger than they need to be.
Yeah.
And they often feel there's nothing they can do about it until they discover there is something they can do about it.
Yeah.
And then what happens? The same people who shame them give them positive affirmation, which then begins to bolster
Yeah.
the bad habits.
The family member that says, "Oh, you're overweight," and then the next time they purge and lose weight, then, "Oh, you're
my
slimmer."
gosh.
They get that social validation.
Yeah, you look so good. I love what you
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So now your daughter,
but it's society in general,
yeah, it is society in general.
because of expectations and what is beauty.
What is beauty, and how to lose weight too. There's this false myth of willpower where if you
Exactly, like your
lose
writing
weight,
says.
basically you're lazy and worthless, it seems like. And now modern day science is showing that no, willpower is actually very not good for losing weight. It's a harmful short term solution. So yeah, there's a lot of cultural stuff in this whole thing.
There is.
Yeah.
And when you look into treatments, it can be awfully expensive. I
Yeah.
know that just a month, this was back 12 years ago, it was around $35,000 for the month of inpatient therapy. And that is not covered by your medical plan in most cases, unless you've got a really good health plan that covers mental disorders, because they don't consider this to be a health disorder if it originates in the brain,
Yeah.
even though
Because
it impacts your entire physical health.
that was why the local therapy and doctor uh, didn't work, or didn't work all the way, or wasn't as effective, or
I think it comes down to, I don't know if you're familiar with Prochaska and DiClementi's stages of change model.
I am. I love it.
Yes, she wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
She wasn't even in contemplation.
So those who are listening, there's 5 stages: pre-contemplation,
Where you're
contemplation,
clueless,
yeah,
contemplation, where you know about it. Then there is preparation,
readiness, yeah,
readiness,
action, taking
action,
action, yeah, yep,
and, and there's maintenance and relapse.
and relapse, yeah,
Yeah, so there are
yeah,
actually 6 stages.
yeah,
And that's what we were seeing, is we were seeing relapse.
yeah.
Now, the other thing is, does your child have an addictive personality or addictive tendencies? During this time, once she was 16, she took up smoking cigarettes. Now, we weren't buying them for her, and we were both very much against it. I'm highly allergic.
Mm,
So she would walk into the house, I'd know instantly that she'd been smoking.
mm,
I knew if she was smoking in her bedroom, and she said she was blowing it out the window, and maybe so, but it still got into the ventilation system.
mm, mm.
You may find that they turn to smoking other things, or doing other things which bring about some addictive tendency.
Yeah. So, as what would be your remarks to parents? And before we get to that, something else too. Bulimia, the 3 warning signs you gave, from the cutting at the back of the hand to the signs in the bathroom to the smells. Oftentimes, I'll work with people who are more binging, but not vomiting, or they're doing excessive exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, we met one of her um, fellow patients when she was at her second institution, and that's the one that really gave her more of the tools that she needed,
mm,
and also gave the family therapy week an
mm,
opportunity to get together in mediated situations,
interesting.
and learn how to talk to each other without being blameful and without feeling blamed. And that one, by the way, was Sierra Tucson. So, but again, it's an even deeper level. And they were dealing with all sorts of addictions. People there with sex addictions, money addictions, exercise addictions.
Yeah.
One of her good friends she was a binge eater,
Yep.
but she exercised all the time.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that
That
can
could
be
be a
another.
that could be a warning sign too. Yeah. That could be a warning sign.
And jokingly, I was saying I wish she had been anorexic because it was so much cheaper than bulimic.
I hear
Because
you.
you're not just wasting the food.
Did your daughter ever? I'm just kind of thinking more warning signs for parents who might have a child who struggles with eating, but did she stop going to like birthday parties or anything like that?
No,
Okay, okay, got you.
no,
Sometimes that can be you're where there's food, they avoid it. Um, but
no.
yeah, so what were some of these tools? This sounds very practical. So some of the tools at the second.
Meditation, calming, finding alternative ways of dealing with things. But she didn't put these into practice. We said, what's wrong? And they said, well, she just may not be ready yet. And that was even before I knew about Prochaska and DiClementi. I learned about them about 5 years later. And that's, looking back, I can say that she was in preparation, but she wasn't ready for action. And it wasn't until about a year later, when she was totally out on her own, living in Hollywood. She ended up moving to California and trying to break into the acting business, that she realized she just wasn't physically able to function. It was just too hard on her body, too hard on her mind. And she took it upon herself to use all of these things that they had taught her. And I wasn't privy to what the therapeutic training was. She began to use these tools and modalities, and eventually it took about a good 12, 18 months
Yeah.
where she was no longer purging, no longer binging and purging. She was maintaining her weight. She started a vegan diet and found that to be very helpful. Didn't last that long because she loves steak.
I love steak too.
Has been a dominant carnivore. But during that time, she developed some amazing recipes and wrote a cookbook, got a $20,000 advance, and got it published. That's a huge advance for a first-time author,
Yeah.
for an unpublished author, and the book was fabulous. But at that time, then she got into a relationship where love and physical contact became very strong, and this person led her astray through some of her other weaknesses to addictive tendencies, which
Mm.
didn't involve food, fortunately, but still took her away from promoting the book, and it really shut her down for about 5 years until that relationship broke off. And that's when she realized how strong some of her addictions were, because she was addicted to this person's
Yeah.
being.
Yeah.
And she had to actually fall out of love with her in order to get even more healthy and move on. And now she's in a very healthy relationship. She runs a restaurant. A person who had been a bulimic is running a restaurant. Of course, they make healthy bowls, and they're helping people lose weight, but they're doing it the right way through portion control, what it is you're putting into your body.
Yeah.
And,
Not
and
body shaming and
right.
all that.
And what I love in your work is recognizing when your body says, "That's all I need."
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful teaching. I just met someone the other day, pre-diabetic, and she was asking me questions like she kind of knew what she had to eat, but she had questions about how much she should eat,
Mm-hmm.
or no, how frequently. Like, do I eat 1 time a day, 3 times a day, 5 times? Like, and it was like you're going. I tried the long answer. The short answer was you're going to go down a rabbit hole. You're going to hear people that tell you 2. You're going to help people tell you 5. The best thing is you got to listen to your body.
Listen to your body. Mm-hmm.
Listen to your body. Like
If you
that's
you know.
that's how you know. That's how you know in your heart. Like everything else is just like there's an argument to do 2. There's an argument to do 5. It's just they're all logical, but until you tap in your heart.
One thing that helps me just to get to where I want to and maintain where I am, which isn't where I am right now, but that was due to some other stuff. Actually, I have a bad hip. And I'm not able to go on walks anymore. And until I get this operated on and replaced, I'm on the higher end of where I want to be. So my wife likes to nibble while we're watching TV, and she's got her little box of favorites. Me, I go to the refrigerator, I get out a couple of stalks of celery. You get the same crunch, but I'm hydrating, and it's fiber. For me, I drink a lot of water. I'll drink at least 5 to 8 glasses of water a day. They say 8, but that can make you float. And when you're a guy and you get my age, it makes you get up at night more times than you'd like to. It's not always so easy to fall back asleep. But water, often, the need for water, the need for hydration is often imitated by what people think is a need for food, because it still involves the growling in the stomach.
Yeah. And I can't, well, a couple thoughts come up in response. One, I loved how you said the crunch. Like, I think you find that joy too in celery. I think sometimes, because that was something I did as a wrestler, but there was no joy in celery. I would eat like carrots and grapes because like that's a way to nibble on something, but there was no joy there, right? Like I was restricting. And when we have that restricting mentality, there's no joy there.
Toasted soybeans are great, or toasted chickpeas.
Yeah.
Just to satisfy that crunch. And
those are very about. You mentioned earlier about some things that you learned personally. It sounded like when your daughter was doing the second outpatient, you weren't privy to some of the meditation and calming techniques that she learned, which are incredibly useful. Mm-hmm. But it sounded like that you had partaken in some sort of family therapy, and just in context for those listening, I mean, relationships are so important, from your daughter's harmful relationship, I'll say, with
Mhm.
that sent her in a 5-year tailspin. Relationships are so important. So what did you learn in that family therapy about not speaking blamefully, and what did you like?
No,
Diving into the nitty gritty, how could someone walk away with some information they can apply to their family?
well, it's having a healthy communication framework.
Hmm.
It, it's stating it in a way that is not putting it on the other person, but putting it on you. I have observed this happen. When I see that, I feel that, and I'm concerned about that. Then you make a request, or
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
yeah, and say what I'd like is permission to talk to you about this when I notice it. And if you're
Mhm.
up to discussing it, that's fine. But if not, I request that you set aside time so that we can discuss it in
Mhm.
advance. I'm looking for that. Um, Here it is, a healthy communication.
Nonviolent communication, something like that.
Yeah, there's something I really need to say. It's been my observation that as a family, and I hope I've created the space and that's one way. Let's see.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. I think the core thing you're expressing is that a lot of people will say, "You are eating too much. You are not treating me the way I want to be treated. You are
Mhm.
basically, it's your fault. You." But you're the
Yeah,
practical
but
conversation. I
that's
feel I.
right. You have to say it from your perspective. You have to state the experience or observation without judgment or blame about whatever it is, and
Ye-
express your feelings about the situation. And state your needs. That's what the
Yeah,
third one is. What would you like to happen? And then you make your request. But it's using I statements rather than you statements.
yeah, and using
This
facts,
happened.
not judgments.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tricky one for that can be tricky.
And it's all part of that intimacy that we need to develop with each other, which is, and as they said at Sierra Tucson, intimacy, break it down into me, see.
Huh. Oh, I see.
Into me, see it from my perspective.
Yeah. And
But
how did family dynamics change rapidly after that? Was it gradual? Was it how did things change after you had that training?
well, as I said, she came home and packed up her stuff and moved away because she
Yeah.
actually dropped out of college. She had a full ride on a honors program scholarship and had to walk away from it because of her eating disorder. She wasn't able to focus on exams, focus
Mhm.
on her work, and she just didn't want to start. She didn't want to get a grade report that was going to be so difficult to raise up a grade level, an initial score.
Yeah.
So she left school, and after she finished this program, she came home, got all her stuff. She was 19 then, an adult. She moved to California. So here we are now. She's farther away. We don't know what she's actually doing. We can't visit her as often. And so we're going on trust. And,
Yeah.
and we did have video chats so we could see that she was maintaining where she was and not getting thinner, but we still weren't sure.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit different in the family dynamics. And then about 2 years later, I had the opportunity to relocate. We were living in Ohio then. I had the opportunity to relocate from Ohio to Walnut Creek, and she's down in LA. So once a month, I would visit.
Ah.
And I would put eyes on the situation. I would see how she was dealing with things in a fairly healthy way.
You said a year after she moved to LA, she became ready on her own.
Mm-hmm.
That's a powerful step.
Yeah, she realized that it just wasn't a healthy situation to be in, and she needed to be at her best. She was going to actually casting director classes. I asked her, "What you want to have something to fall back on in case you don't make it in acting. She says, oh, no, I know I'm a great actress, and I've had acting classes. I know how to act. I need to learn how to get hired.
Yeah.
And so she went to casting director classes to learn what is it the casting directors are looking for when they hire actors.
Interesting.
Smart kid.
That's smart.
Was very smart. And she did end up having some great parts. She was in a movie with Barbara Bain that never actually made the U.S. release, a real nice horror film where she got to stab somebody and get drowned in a bathtub. She was someone.
I'm getting super curious now about how do you get drowned in a bathtub and what do casting directors look for. Maybe those are side topics, but heck, if you know any answers to those questions and you could keep it short and simple, I'd love to hear.
I don't know what they're looking for.
Okay, yeah.
She found out it doesn't really know. And sometimes, and when you get the call back, then what they call the suits are there.
Yeah. So how does addictive behavior and oftentimes an eating disorder, you mentioned several times that it can be a $80 100-day thing. Seems like there's a correlation between buying stuff and this whole problem with food. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, there's a definite correlation between money and food because they're both core survival tools.
Yeah. What do you mean core survival tool? I mean, I get it with food, right? Like food, obviously, you need to live. Money.
Yeah, well, you need money. You need food.
You need money.
You need food and water.
Yeah.
And then shelter.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the baseline. Well, how do you acquire those if you're not any other creature but a human? You just seek them out.
Yeah.
A bird needs food, it seeks it out. A hawk needs food, it seeks out the bird.
Mm.
A cat needs food, it seeks out the hawk.
Yeah.
A coyote needs food, it seeks out the cat.
Humans need money.
Yeah,
humans need money.
Yeah, we're at the top of the food chain, but we use money as our medium of exchange.
Yeah.
If we feel we don't have money, then we can't get the food, we can't get the water, we can't get the shelter. It's as if we might die. And so people make a lot of mistakes with money, and they get addicted either to spending. You froze up there. They get addicted to spending, or they get addicted to hoarding. They get addicted to being miserly, and these can drive other people in their life crazy because of their money habits. So it's very similar with food habits. People get very protective of their food. She's in a relationship now, and we understand this with her wife, that her wife likes her stuff, and if she doesn't eat it all, she doesn't want to share it with anybody. She'll let it sit there until it gets old, and she'll either eat it or she'll throw it away. Although she's been getting better because she knows that we like to eat leftovers. The flavors soak in and textures change. So and we're understanding of her, and she's become more understanding of us, saying, okay, tell you what, I'm going to put this in here, and after 2 days, if I don't touch it, you can have some.
There you go.
So when we're together, that's a really nice meeting. And so anything where there's a difference of whether it's with food or with money, you just have to be accommodating. You have to have intimacy. Why is this important? For her, it was important because if she left anything sitting out, she had brothers, they would come by and eat it. And then when she was hungry later, because she was a mindful eater, when she was hungry, she would go eat. So she would go get it, and it'd be gone.
Yeah. Got you. So you've learned a lot on this whole journey from, I mean, even though you personally didn't have an eating disorder, you've learned a lot about addictive behaviors, and you somehow found your way into helping people with money issues, correct?
Yeah, I'd worked for 20 some years as a financial advisor. And when I moved to California, there was a group that I've been a member of for years, even when I was in Ohio, called the Nez Rudin Project. And it's a bunch of financial advisors and others, counselors, therapists, gerontologists, researchers that get together to talk about what money is not. What is money not able to do?
Huh.
If you think about it, it's only a piece of paper that has value because we believe it does.
Yeah.
And its value changes not only in relation to our own belief, but also the economy. And our dollar could be totally worthless tomorrow. It really has nothing backing it. So it only has value because of our belief system. And sometimes people have challenging belief systems. And it can come about by what they've observed in their parents, in their grandparents, aunts and uncles.
Mm.
It comes about either in claiming new beliefs and practices which are positive, they are self-actualized,
Mm.
or they'll develop some challenging and negative behaviors which are resistant and reactive.
Yeah.
So what we do now in money coaching, and this is where I met the person I'm working with, was at this Nasrudin project of what money is not,
Mm.
and her work just resonated with me. So being that she's in Petaluma, which is about as far north from me as you are south from me, about an hour, we got together, and I went through the process first,
Ah.
looking at my own money story.
Mm.
Here I was, very highly educated on all sorts of things. I had an accounting degree, a law degree with emphasis in tax and estate planning. In the brokerage world, I had every license, even options on foreign currency futures. So first of all, you had to get licensed on futures. You had to get licensed on foreign currencies, and then options on the foreign currency futures. And I only had one client trading it, but because he wanted to, I had to know all this stuff. But you get to the emotional side,
Yeah.
the behavioral side, and I was a wreck. I was making good money, so if I saw something, I'd get it. It's just like with a piece of cake. You're on a diet, you're someplace, you see a piece of cake, who's going to win?
Yeah.
Maybe that piece of cake.
Especially if you're on a diet, you're feeling deprived, or even I can see that with money too. The same thing. You're feeling emotional deprivation, and buying or eating that piece of cake, it gives you that burst, that burst of adrenaline or whatever, the positive that those endorphins.
That endorphin release.
Yeah.
There was an article appeared in Newsweek right before they stopped publishing. I've got it loading now. I'm just waiting for the computer to load it. And I was talking about whippets, how he knew, what a whippet is. It's nitrous oxide in a little canister, and they use it in whipped cream containers, which is why they whippets.
Oh, yeah.
But the drug community was developing these little things where you put a punching ball over the end of a canister puncture device. So people would fill this punching ball up, and then they would do nitrous oxide. And it actually replaced oxygen in this person's body to such a degree that they died.
Ooh.
So the article came out, this was in February of 2012. Why can killing brain cells feel good? And so whether it's whippets or marijuana, alcohol, they were looking at a question that, why do people find pleasure in killing off their own brain cells? And why isn't the brain wired to reject actions that would actively cause it harm? Or why isn't the brain wired to reject actions that would cause our body harm? And that's because in a perfect world, nature would have already programmed us to avoid self-destructive short-term thrills. And we'd be perfectly rational, never taking risks. But the fact is that evolution wasn't perfect, and it was a random process, and it generally produces good results, but there's no guarantee. So sometimes it's rather clumsy solutions. You think of the spine. A single column supports most of our body weight. Now, if we had 3 columns and a tripod array, we'd have a lot less back pain. But that never really happened. So you go to the brain. You have addiction to thrills, drugs, alcohol, food. That results from an imperfect compromise between something very old and something new. And what's old is our reflexive systems. For most of pre-human history or human prehistory, we only needed short-term thinking, predator or prey, fight or flee. And if you made a snap decision effectively, you survived. And if not, you were somebody else's dinner. But what's newer is where we are today, where we have a system that deliberates and reflects. But the challenge is that the reflexive systems, because they're older, tend to dominate. If you're walking down the street and you see a bungee that's in an S shape, you might freeze and say, is that a snake? And then you look at it and you see a little hook coming out. Oh, no, that's just a bungee cord. But for a second there, you're in the same situation, fight, flight, freeze, or fade as it would be if it was a true challenge.
What was that last one? Fade? I've heard of fight, flight, or freeze, but I haven't heard of fade.
Fade. You move into the background so that you're not part of the
Ah,
situation.
you disappear. Yeah,
You
I
detach.
see. Yeah.
There's
Huh.
unattached, which is participating but not being tied to the outcome, and
Interesting.
detached, which is not even participating. So for somebody with food, if you see chocolate cake, you just might eat it, no matter what we might have said at New Year's about dieting. And when you get into the paradox of drug and alcohol abuse, and again, even with eating, this I would say that bulimia is a drug addiction because you're addicted to your brain chemistry. In the immediacy of the moment, the reflexive system, because they're so much older, still controls the situation. And that
Absolutely.
may change, but until then, it's just part of our makeup. It's part of the biological makeup.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so hard to resist because we don't know we're fighting our own nature.
Yeah, I generally teach like 4 factors on how to stop binge eating, and from emotional to self-care to physical and to dealing with the cognitive, but it's complex.
It
It's
is.
very complex. It's rooted in, and you got to approach it from different angles because it's this
And it's
it,
the same thing with money.
yeah.
It's the same thing with money.
Yeah, yeah. So
With
you're in the Bay Area. Where can people reach you? Do you got a website? Especially if they want any sort of if they're struggling with money and this message somehow resonates with them, how can they get in contact with you?
Well, years ago when I was started out on my own, I had a website that I titled Planning for Life because what I was doing was helping people not just to plan for a specific event, but doing life planning. How do your values and your goals fit together with where your money is and how things will unfold and all the different variables? How can we model this out to help you plan for your life? Uh, I thought it was a great name until I was getting calls about birth control. I appeared right next to Planned Parenthood. And so I eventually got my ad, but I still have Planning for Life. So if you go to planningforlife.info, INFO, because .com was taken at the time, you'll get there, or .biz, planningforlife.biz. Or if you just do Google Money Coach Shags, Shags. Now that comes about, you can see on the screen there, Stephen Shagrin. When I was in college, we had to enter a name. 6 characters was the max back then in order to get our batch, the stuff we did on the computer terminal, picked up at the giant computer center, printed on a big green sheet of paper. So I put in Steve or Stephen, and I got there, all the work was gone. Well, somebody named Stephen just picked up everything there.
Oh,
So I had Steve, and I didn't like it because I never went by Steve. So I put Shagrin for my last name, and that looked funny, so I just put Shag S. And when you were getting your work, they printed out your name on the first 3 pages in big block letters. So the S was made of capital S's, the H was made of capital H's, and so on. It said Shag, 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 Shag. So I took that, and the walls in our dorm room were that puke green. So I just put this up as wallpaper. It stuck. The nickname Shags stuck. So just Google Money Coach Shags, and I'll pop up. And that's how you
awesome.
can find me.
Awesome. I think that
I,
wraps up today.
I know we went through an awful lot. So if anybody out there has questions, feel free to forward them to me either directly or through you, through Jared.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely. If you have any questions for Shags and whatever, yeah, I'm open to pass them along to him or however you want to do it.
Yeah.
Shags, I want to thank you for your time, brother.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.